How's Matrix? How are you doing today? This is our first video lecture that we're going to be having until they let us back into schools. So we're going to continue from chapter 6, measurement, which is on page 166. Okay. The work that you guys did over the 3 weeks when we were in lockdown, we'll go over that in the Skype session if you have any issues with that. But if not, then we'll start doing these video lectures. As we do them once a week, we're going to have a Skype session to just go over any questions, any issues that you might be having with these lessons. Okay, so the Skype will be used for questions and answers, and these videos will be used as theory and me going through some of the exercises, showing you how to do some of these things, and obviously giving you homework to do. Alright guys, remember there are answers at the back of the book, so you can use that to see if you're on the right track, but please don't copy answers. It doesn't help anyone. You waste your time and you don't learn how to do this, you write the exam and you fail. Okay, so guys, please work through this, don't be lazy. Alright, cool, so let's start with page 166, chapter 6, which is now measurement. So these are fairly easy and very short little sections, so we'll go through them quite quickly. So the first unit is measuring length and measuring distance. So in grade 10 and 11, we've covered this already, and we talked about different units and different measuring devices that we can use to measure different types of lengths and distances. So if you look at exercise 1, it's basically asking you to estimate some of the distances in your house or in your room, and basically stand at a point, estimate distances to, say, your car or the door or something, and then actually take the measurement and see how accurate you were. Alright, so I want you guys to try that in exercise 1. So number 1 and 2 are your measurements of your height, of your room, and so on. So then there's no right or wrong answers, but I do want you to do it because we're going to be using these measurements later on. Okay. So please do exercise 1, number 1 and 2 for homework. Okay, then number 3 I can do with you, so I'll show you how that works. Number 3 says, Seshni drove from Mossel Bay to Durban to visit her brother. Her car averages 15 kilometers per litre of petrol. The odometer reading at the beginning of the trip read 97,350 kilometers. And at the end of the trip, it read 98,650 kilometers. Okay, guys, remember, odometer is that wheel thingy in your car on the dashboard that counts your kilometers that the car drives. Okay, so for us to find out what was the length of a particular trip, we record the measurement of the odometer before we leave for the trip. We drive to our destination, we record the odometer reading after we reached our destination, and then we subtract the two. We subtract the smaller one from the bigger one, and the difference is going to tell us what was the distance between the 2 points A and B. Alright, so that's what she's talking about. We also have a trundle wheel. A trundle wheel is exactly this thing over here, right? It's what construction people use to measure, to pace out distances. Okay, so you'll see in the exercise it asks you what kind of measuring device will you use for this or for that or for that. Right, so obviously if we're measuring kilometers and long distances, we're going to use an odometer, we're going to drive. If we are walking around and we need to measure, say, the perimeter of a house, we're going to use the trundle wheel. If we need to measure, say, what is the dimensions of this book, we're going to use a ruler or a tape measure. Okay. So depending what you need to measure, you're going to use the appropriate device. We're obviously not going to use a ruler to measure the distance from the school to your house. It's going to take us forever. Alright, cool guys. So let's try to work out number 3. So this is now exercise 1. Question 3.1. So it says, Seshni drove from Mossel Bay to Durban to visit her brother. Her car averages 15 kilometers per litre of petrol. The odometer reading at the beginning of the trip read 97,350 and at the end of the trip 98,650 kilometers. 3.1. How many litres of petrol did Seshni need to get to Durban? Alright, so they're asking us how much petrol does she need for this trip from Mossel Bay to Durban? So we obviously need to figure out what was the distance between the two places, and that we're going to use the odometer readings for that. And once we have the total distance, we're going to divide it by 15 kilometers, because on 1 liter of petrol, she can drive 15 kilometers. So by taking the total, dividing it by 15, we're getting exactly how many loops of 15 we have, i.e. how many liters of petrol we're going to need for the trip. Okay, so let's do this. So we have the odometer reading. So we have 98,650 minus 97,350. Okay. Guys, when you're doing this kind of calculation, you need to have the bigger one minus the smaller one, okay? Because you're subtracting, you're at your destination and you're subtracting the distance that you covered and what was on your odometer before. So it's the bigger value minus the smaller value. Let's say you made a mistake and you swap them around and you work out the answer and you get a negative value. That negative value is going to indicate to you that you've swapped the two values around. You say the smaller one minus the bigger one. Okay. So when you get a negative answer, don't panic. Just realize that you did it incorrectly. Don't tell me that, no, he drove minus 3 kilometers. Okay, it doesn't make sense. Right, so let's subtract this. So how are we going to do this? Well, 98,650 minus 97,350. Okay, I don't have my calculator with me. We can do it the long way. 98,650 minus 97,350. Okay, 0 minus 0 is 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. 6 minus 3 is 3. 8 minus 7 is 1. 9 minus 9 is 0. So that equals to 1,300 what? Kilometers. Okay, guys, don't forget the units. Okay, I don't need to put units here or here because this is my calculation. But my final answer must have the units. You don't give me the units, I don't give you 1 mark. Okay. Right, so that was now that was the total distance. Now we need to say, well, how much petrol is she using? So we can say liters of petrol equal total distance 1,300 divided by how much? 15. Okay, because it's per 1 liter she can drive 15 kilometers. 1,300 divided by 15. Let me find my calculator. I don't want to do it the long way and waste time. Okay, we get 86,66 recurrent. So I'll just say 67 as rounding off. Okay. And what is that? Well, that is liters. Okay, cool. We've answered 3.1. Let's do 3.2. If petrol costs approximately 10 Rand 50 per liter, how much did she spend on petrol for her trip? All right, so they're not telling us that she's going there and back. Okay, so we're going to assume that she's just going the one way. So how much money is she going to spend? Well, we can say cost, which is 3.2, equals the price of petrol times how much petrol we're going to need. Price of petrol is 10 Rand 50 multiplied by how many liters? 86.67. And that will equal to okay, guys, this is the answer that I get. Okay, 910 Rand, 0.035 cents. What's wrong with this answer? Okay, can we get a 0.5 of a cent? No. So remember, when we're dealing with money, we have to round things off to 2 decimal places always. Okay, so this answer is actually approximately 910 Rand, comma, How many cents? That 5 will add, so it will be 0.4 cents. Okay, so guys, when you are doing these kinds of questions, there are marks allocated for giving me the correct formula. So you are multiplying the quantity and the price. That's one mark. Another mark is to get the actual answer, what your calculator tells you. And then another mark is to round it off if the question asks you to round it off. Okay, so use the wavy lines to say that it approximately is equal to whatever when you round it off. Okay. Right, cool. So that is 3.2. So it's just starting us off on speed, distance, and time and costs, which we've been doing forever. Right, let's go to exercise 2. So on the next page, 167. So I'll read the question for you. It basically says the scale diagram below shows the plans for housing development on a property that has 4 straight lines, which are indicated by thick black lines. The development consists of 20 small rectangular houses, each on its own plot, with streets between them. The position of the house and the off-street parking area is indicated on the plan of each plot. Use the diagram to answer the questions that follow. Okay guys, we're doing this question over here. So we have a diagram. They've given us a plan for a development. There's a key on the right that describes what each thing is, and we need to answer the questions that follow. Okay guys, I want you to do these questions. I'm going to run through them, see if there's any difficulties, or I'll explain to you what you need to do, but you guys are going to go home and do this. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Estimate the total length of the wall needed to enclose the entire development, excluding the 4 places where streets enter the development. Alright, so obviously what they're talking about, the streets that enter the development are those ones over there. Okay, so we're not going to be counting that. Now, another way to do this, if you look at the scale over here, it basically says that 8 blocks lengthwise is 24 meters. Okay, so you can use that scale saying that 1 block is 3 meters. But now the problem is that once we have this diagonal over here, it's not counting blocks exactly. Okay, it's going across them. So if we look at this top right corner, that's not 1 block. That's more than a block because it's going sideways. Okay, so what I recommend you guys do is use your ruler to measure this distance over here. And then that distance is 24 meters. Then measure that distance and work it out. Okay, so that's a little hint for you guys. Right, so number 1, estimate the total length of the wall needed. You can do that. Number 2, calculate the total length of the wall needed to enclose the entire development. Okay, so excluding the 4 places where the streets enter the development. Estimate the total length, calculate the total length. Okay, so first one looks at calculate, estimating. The next one is looking at calculating. Number 3, if the boundary wall will cost 750 per meter to build, what is the total cost of putting a wall around the development? Okay, so use your answers from 1 and 2, or rather from 2 because that's the more accurate one where you calculate it, and multiply it obviously by the cost and tell me what will be the cost of the entire development walling. Number 4, what is the total length of additional fencing that will be needed to put a fence around the boundary of each one of the properties? There will be no fencing where the off-street parking meets the street, which will be a gate. There will also be no need for fencing where there's already a boundary wall. Okay, so what they're saying is that obviously these little yellow blocks over here, that's where your driveway is. They don't need a fence because that's where the gate is. And also, the boundary wall is already a fence that's being put around the entire development. So we're not counting that. You are counting the boundary walls between the houses. Okay. Alright, cool guys, you can do that. Number 5, if the total cost for the fencing is 120,000 Rand, what is the cost of the fencing per meter? Okay, so you have a total cost, get your total meters of fence, divide the total cost by your meters, and you should get your answer for that. Okay. Number 6, what is the total length of all the streets in the development? Take measurements in the middle of the street. Okay, so what they're talking about is that here's our streets, okay? You want to measure in between of the street over here. So you're not taking that long distance or the short, you're taking in between of the street. Okay. And number 7, a boy is practicing skateboarding on the longest straight piece of street in the development. He's going as fast as he can, and his friend is timing him with his watch. The time when he's at the beginning of the street is 9 hours, 5 minutes, and 57 seconds. And the time when he reaches the other end of the street is 9 hours, 6 minutes, and 6 seconds. What was his average speed in meters per second and in kilometers per hour? Okay, this is a somewhat of a more challenging question. So what they're asking here is really two things. They want to find out what was the time taken for him to cross the street. Another thing is that they didn't tell us what was the length of the street, but they did say the longest street. So obviously you need to look at the map and figure out where's the longest street, measure it. You have the time from his stopwatch, so you have time. Now they're asking for meters per second and kilometers per hour. So work in meters first and in seconds, and then convert that to kilometers and then hours. Okay, or seconds to minutes rather, and then to kilometers. Okay. All right, guys, you can do that, I'm sure. So let's continue. The next section is going to be Unit 2, which is measuring mass. Okay, so this is also a rather easy and small section that we'll cover. So measuring mass. There are many different types of scales that can be used for measuring the mass of objects and people. In other words, weighing them. They have different levels of accuracy and different maximum values, depending on the purpose they are designed for. Some have analog displays and others have digital displays. Okay, so all they're trying to tell us is that, again, there's different ways of measuring mass. Okay, it depends what we are measuring and what degree of accuracy do you need. Okay, so let's look at exercise 3. You're going to measure the mass of several objects and compare your results with these obtained from other learners. Discuss any differences between measurements and check that you are using the instruments correctly. Okay, I'll run with you through these with you. So number 1, which scale will you use to measure the mass of a person? Okay, so if we're measuring a person, we're obviously not going to be using a kitchen scale. We're going to be using a body scale for body mass. Okay, so one of those floor scales that you stand on. Okay, right, then it says which unit of measurement will you use? Okay, so a typical human weighs from anything from, I don't know, 40, 50 kilograms to 120, let's say. So obviously we're going to be using kilograms. We're not going to be measuring a person's weight in grams because it's going to be a very big number. We will use kilograms. Now measure your own mass and record the measurement. Guys, I want you to actually measure these things again and write them down because we're going to be using these measurements later on in the questions that are going to be coming. Okay. Obviously, if you don't have a scale at home and you can't find a scale with this lockdown, you don't need to go buy a scale, it's fine. You can skip that for time being. But if you do have a scale, please go and try this. Okay. Number 2, which scale will you use to measure the mass of this book? Okay, for mass of this book, we're going to use a kitchen scale. It's not, I would estimate this book to be maybe 400 grams, 500 grams. It's not very heavy. It's not very big. Now measure the mass of this book and record the measurement using the unit you chose. Okay, so measure the book if you have a kitchen scale. Number 3, do you have a scale that can measure the mass of your eraser? If you do, try to measure this mass. Okay, now mass of your eraser is relatively small. What unit are we going to be using? It is grams. Okay, if we were elsewhere, we could be using ounces, but here we're going to be using grams. Okay, I estimate an eraser to be maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 grams, okay, not more than that. So to measure that, I would use maybe a jewelry scale, okay, so something that measures things very precisely, okay, because, I mean, gold is expensive. You need to know exactly how much gold there is. We can't say, oh, it's about 2 or 3 or 5 grams, you know, because a gram of gold is like, I don't know, how much is a gram of gold? Who knows? Okay, but an ounce of gold is like $1,600. Okay, so a gram of gold is still relatively expensive. So when we're measuring out gold or really expensive things that cost a lot, we need to have precision. Okay, so again, if you have a jewelry scale, then do it. If not, then not. What unit will you use to record the measurement? We're going to use grams. All right. Cool, guys. I think let's leave it here for a bit. Okay, so actually, no. You know what? I'm going to give you exercise 4 to try for homework. Okay, so it's just adding on to what we've done with measuring mass. Okay, give exercise 4 a shot. If you struggle with it, I'll help you in the next lesson. Okay, or actually, I'll go through some of these in the next lesson. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Our first video lecture, and there'll be many more to come. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to WhatsApp me on the group or email me. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you're all staying safe in this lockdown and you're not going too crazy by being locked up. But at least now there's maths for you to do, so it's all good. Okay, cool, guys. So please finish exercise 1. That's measuring the distance. Exercise 2 was the plan. Exercise 3 was measuring the different weights. And exercise 4, I want you to give it a shot, see how far you get. Okay, cool, guys. I'll pick up from where we left off in our next session. Yeah, take care.